The first calm morning after Hurricane Sandy had blown out to sea. I was living in New York City, and I woke up with a sense of purpose. Just 2 years before coming to seminary, I had been working as a firefighter and an EMT in North Carolina. And the seminary had already announced that they were closing the school all week while the subway tunnels were pumped out of seawater. So I decided that this was my chance to be helpful. In fact, I wasn't the only person with this idea. A number of us from seminary were a part of community groups and churches who were all preparing to help out in the recovery from the worst storm to hit New York City in memory. There was a really impressive grassroots relief effort already underway just the day after the storm left. It was actually organized by a lot of veterans of the Occupy Wall Street movement, a protest that had spent the past few months camped in a park just north of the Stock Exchange in Manhattan. The protest had been booted from their camp before the storm, but the social networks and relationships were still intact, so they set up shop in an old Catholic church in Brooklyn with easy access to the hardest hit parts of Staten Island. They set up rows of laptops on the communion tables, and they used Twitter and Facebook to find people who were in need and match them up with people who had resources. They used vast networks of texting alerts that they set up during the protests to help turn out large number of people to volunteer and help with some big jobs. Within a couple of days, at any given moment, there were about 200 people lined up around the corner from the front door of this church, waiting for work. The whole city was shut down, and so people were showing up to help out their neighbors and friends. The organizers came up with a very simple method for organizing the relief effort. Volunteers waited on this long line, and then when you got to the front, you were handed an index card that had a job written on it. Things like, drive this van full of blankets to 500 Tyson Lane, or go to 107 Canal Street, go door to door and see if anyone has medication they need refrigerated, or take this food to the temporary shelter on Coney Island, or drive to Rosebank and shovel mud out of basements. These requests came in from residents, from churches. Even the Brooklyn and Staten Island boroughs' presidents' offices were sending information out to this grassroots group. And so when I got to the front of the line, I proudly stated my credentials. Not only was I an EMT, but a seminary student and a chaplain. I could help people with their emotional and spiritual needs, or I could offer medical assistance to people who were stuck in their homes. what work do you have for such a qualified volunteer? We need someone to sort these coats. They sent Molly and I and a few others out to a halfway constructed parking garage that was being used as a makeshift donation processing site to sort truckloads of donated coats, kids and adults. See, they needed kids' coats in Long Island City, but Rockaway was running low on adult sizes. Now, I have to confess to you, I was pretty grumpy about this. I wanted to really help. I wanted to have a shovel in the mud in someone's basement, or door to door, or drive one of those trucks with the huge wheels through 2 feet of floodwater. Help. But this is what they needed. And so that's what we did. And it was a really amazing experience. Molly and I had a chance to meet a steady stream of really wonderful, dedicated people, and they even made us the garage depot coordinators for the day, and so we got to make some managerial decisions about the operations there, and by the end of it, we were feeling really proud of what we had helped organize. From that experience, I learned that it's really important to never be so sure of what you're supposed to do, to never be so sure of what you're supposed to do that you miss out on a chance to be a part of something else incredible. Simeon and Anna had been around for a long time. Anna prayed without ceasing in the temple, and Simeon was a devout man waiting for Israel to be set free. They spent day and night and week and year and lifetime in the temple, waiting. They knew that they were living lives that were part of a story that had not yet been completed. They believed that God had something in store for their people. In fact, they were so attuned to the stirrings of the spirits that both of them recognized their greatest hopes in an 8-day-old infant bundled in his mother's arms. They spent their whole lives waiting and hoping for a Messiah, imagining and dreaming about the ways that God would set them free. And I imagine that they came up with all sorts of scenarios and visions and ideas about how it might all play out. And one day, Mary and Joseph walk into the temple with a baby in their arms. Through it all, Simeon and Anna never clung so fervently to a single vision of God's future that they couldn't see it unfolding in a child who had never done a thing but squirm and cry. 8 days old. But Simeon wasn't worried about how it would look. He didn't wonder what part he was to play. He saw. He rejoiced. He praised God, and he was ready to depart. When I was standing outside that church in Brooklyn with branches and debris still littering the streets, there were beautiful things happening all around me. There were New Yorkers with nothing but a half tank of gas and a love-filled heart, shuttling casseroles through muddy streets. There were carpenters and plumbers ready to help fight off the mold. It was people at their best, but it wasn't the first thing I noticed, because I didn't quite like the place where I fit in. Not Simeon. Even if he knew his dreams by heart, even if he had a script in his back pocket, about how he hoped the Messiah would save them all, he was ready when he was surprised by that child. He wasn't waiting in the temple for a Messiah to mentor or a new movement to consult for. He was waiting to rejoice in the beauty of something amazing that God was doing for his people. And Anna saw the answer to her 80-year prayer vigil wrapped in swaddling clothes, and she went out to tell everyone she knew that a child had been sent to set them free. Now, this is the challenge about having a Savior who shows up as a baby. It seems kind of foolish to build our lives around a leader who can't yet walk. It seems almost irresponsible to place our hopes in someone who has not yet even spoken a word. If you read the gospel stories, you'll see that even they are in a rush to get to the grown-up Jesus. 2 of the gospels don't say a word about how Jesus was born. And the 2 that do, it's just a short story at the beginning. The Gospels are in a rush to get to the grown-up Jesus who proves his worth with miracles and wisdom. But Anna and Simeon in the temple, like the wise ones and the shepherds who journey to the stable, they challenge us to find the sort of faith that can simply rejoice in the presence of God's wondrous gift to us. I have no doubt that God is doing something absolutely wondrous in this world right now. I expect that God is probably doing something absolutely wondrous in many of your lives. A gift that you have dreamed of, all you have ever hoped for, and it looks nothing like you expected. We need to find a way to have eyes like Simeon's, ready to see something incredible in an unexpected place. We just need a heart like Anna's, ready to know God's handiwork when we see it and sing a song of praise to the whole earth. We all have dreams. We all have hopes, we all have expectations for how our future will unfold, and all of it is great, but we also tend to trap ourselves into thinking that there is just one clear path to the future that we imagine. I think that happens a lot around this time of year. The one thing, if I change this one thing, if I do this one thing, then we'll get there. We follow a well-worn trail. We become captives of our narrow imaginations. We line up the stepping stones. We make our plan, and we set out. And if something doesn't go right, or if one of those steps happens in the wrong order, or if life takes a sharp turn, then suddenly we throw our hands up and say, it must have been doomed from the start. Or worse, we start to imagine that we are somehow not deserving of fulfilled dreams. Meanwhile, openings come and go, and opportunities to follow a new path appear only to be distractions. Simeon and Anna had been around for a long time. Anna prayed without ceasing, and Simeon was waiting for Israel to be set free. They knew that they were living their lives as part of a story that had not yet been completed. They believed that God had something in store for their people, and their hearts were so open and their spirits so attuned, and their souls so willing to entertain impossible surprises that they were able to see all of their dreams become real in a tiny infant, 8 days old, who hadn't done a thing, who had not uttered a word. I believe that when each of you were born, you were the answer to some ancestor's greatest hope for the world. You were the answer to somebody's prayer. Each one of you, when you were born, was somebody's dream come to life. And each one of us still has a part in the future that God imagines for the world. Each one of us has a part to play. Each one of our lives is an answer to God's hope. But we have to stay open. We have to be flexible. We have to be willing to be surprised by how it will all unfold. We have to be detached from any need to know precisely what it will look like. We have to be ready to be surprised. And most of all, we have to rely on God and expect God to answer our prayers in some wild way that we could never, ever, ever imagine.
He showed me the way. Go tell it on the mountain, over the hills and everywhere. Go tell it on the mountain that Jesus Christ is born. The shepherds kept their watching or siding to flock by night. Behold, throughout the heavens there shone a holy light.